Hello folks, the old sergeant here, and I believe we need to rethink our current Pax Americana. Now, Pax Americana is Latin for American Peace or Peace of America, and it's modeled after Pax Romana for Rome and Pax Britannica for Britain, for England. Pax Romana, 27 BC to 180 AD, was a period of growth and expansion, and there was some conflicts, but in general for the time period it was pretty quiet. It was the time that Rome grew to their largest population. They had a thriving economy. They were at their largest size geographically, and they did this with things like establishing police forces and building roads. The Romans just basically wanted things quiet. They wanted things under control, and they enforced that by being the big guy. Pax Britannica, recognized as 1815 to 1914, was a period where Britain had expanded to large portions of the planet with colonies all over. At their peak, they controlled a quarter of the world's landmass and 1/5 of the entire world's population. There was a saying that the sun never set on the British Empire. So while many people will criticize the English for doing that, they did bring a lot of people out of pure bondage and practically Stone Age living and raise them to modern living standards. They've given up their colonies now, but some folks think that it probably would have been better in some locations if it was still being run by the British. And then we have Pax Americana, 1945 to present. So right after World War II, the United States began its superpower status with a large military, big economic power, cultural power, and it was created a peace among the major powers of the planet. You'll notice that in the last 70 plus years that Pax Americana has existed, there hasn't been a lot of wars between the European powers, and that's because of us. It has been called the Long Peace, even though we're used to seeing lots of wars. But the United States has been doing good all over the planet. We're the people that folks run to when there's a natural disaster, when there's crises. We're the go-to guy. Now, a lot of people in the world may hate us, but we try to be the good guys. And we are probably the nicest people to ever have an empire. You notice that a lot of our recent wars, we gave the land back and rebuilt them. But now things are beginning to change. For one thing, China is growing into a large power around the planet economically, and they're building up their military. And Russia is once again trying to rebuild its old empire, being afraid of invasion because they've been invaded a lot in their history. They like to have buffer states between the people that would and historically have invaded them and their mother country. So they're trying to get that back. And they've been a pretty good economic power till recently, when the oil hasn't been all that great for them, but still military power, still an economic power. But there's a big nasty fact we have to deal with, and that is this country is broke. We are $21 trillion in debt and rising. And we really need to reconsider how we're deploying our military and think a little longer term as to the realities of the world. So first of all, probably the most controversial thing I could say is in Europe, it's time for us to leave. And that is because they committed suicide, or are in the middle of committing suicide. Now, for the last 70 plus years, they've been spending their money on social programs because they didn't have to spend it on the military because Uncle Sam was around with Pax Americana. We were taking care of things for them on the American taxpayers' back, and now on the back of numerous generations to come. So we have people yet unborn that are saddled with a tax burden to defend the Europeans that won't defend themselves. With a massive Islamic invasion of their countries, they're going to die. All their cultures are gone. They're going to die. They're dead. There's nothing really that can change that. Demographically, the Muslims will come in, do demographic jihad, they'll have lots of kids, and the next thing you know, all these countries are filled with mainly Muslims, and the original population may be having to flee for their lives. They will destroy everything in those territories. All the historical artifacts, everything. That's who these people are. So, seeing how they want to commit suicide, why should we waste our money in Europe anymore? We may have to take in some fleeing Christians, and what I'd really like is to move a lot of artifacts of our culture and European culture, what we can, away from Europe, so the Muslims don't destroy it. But yeah, out of Europe. They played us for fools way too long. In the Middle East, withdraw. Almost completely. We gave these countries a chance at small d democracies, and they didn't want it because democracy is incompatible with Islam. The people don't want a democracy. They don't want free speech. They don't want anything that's in our Bill of Rights, because to them it is counter to their religion. So we gave them a chance. We had a lot of people die and a lot of money spent to give them that chance. But apparently they don't want it. So I say pull out of almost everywhere in the Middle East. However, I think we should keep a strong Navy presence close to Israel because we have a commitment to protect Israel. And maybe protecting Jordan. But otherwise, we have no reason to be spending lives and money in the Middle East. Asia. I'm kind of on the fence as to whether we should withdraw from the Philippines. They're going socialist. A lot of people have shown that they can't stand the United States. They don't want us there anymore. And I think we ought to leave. But still I'm unsure because on the other hand, we've got China growing. And we'd like to have our military forces close to there to keep them from growing too large. And that's going to be a long-term problem for us as China pushes out into the Pacific. Right now, South Korea is up in the air, depending on what comes out of the negotiations with North Korea. The best option, you would think, would be the unification of the Koreas. That's what a lot of people want. South Koreans, not so much, because they consider the North Koreans a totally separate peoples now. And the bill for integrating the two and rebuilding North Korea is going to be tremendous. And we're not quite sure how China wants to stand on this. Do they want a capitalist country on their border, which means they can do a great deal of business? Or do they want the buffer state between us and them? Japan. We need to allow them to make the change to the Constitution, to build up their armed forces, and let them shoulder the bill. They're another country losing population. They really need to start thinking about making more Japanese. Well, they are thinking about it. Now, if they would do something about making more Japanese. But we should stay there and support Japan, because it's in our interest to also keep China from thinking that maybe Japan could be a nice territorial addition to them. For our Navy has been responsible for supremacy of the seas. We take out piracy. We make sure all the trade lanes are open. So this force projection is just that there's somebody there to make sure that everybody has free access to the sea. Also to provide emergency help when necessary. You should look up an aircraft carrier and see the medical capabilities, food capabilities, hospital capabilities that an aircraft carrier can provide to an area devastated by a natural disaster. In my opinion, we need to keep that. It's expensive, but we need to keep our Navy doing what they're doing, because in the long run it is in the best interest of the United States. Special Forces needs to be increased the best we can. It's very hard to find somebody that can become a Navy SEAL. These people are rare. We need more of them. Especially if we pull out of certain areas, we're going to want to be able to have surgical strike forces to take care of missions that's in America's best interests. All the stuff you never hear about on television news. I would increase that if we could. We need to stop foreign aid. It gives the people at the State Department their little fiefdoms that, oh, we have control and we can influence what goes on in certain countries. Why do we put our descendants in debt to give money that eventually ends up in just some despot's hands? So we need to stop it. We have been a very stabilizing force in the world. We need to withdraw, though, mainly because we can't afford it anymore. We need to rethink how we use our power. We need to rethink Pax Americana. It's something we like, we may want, but it's time to really rethink how much we're doing. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on the matter. If you disagree with me, please let me know. I really like it when people disagree with me and give me really good reasons as to why I'm wrong. Or maybe I missed out on a few ideas and thoughts about Pax Americana that I should have added to this video. So, ladies and gentlemen, stay vigilant.